And we are live on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans, and streaming wherever podcasts live. We're not hard to find. To all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. This is Father Shawn's Paranormal Ministry. I'm your host, Father Shawn Whittington. I'm an ordained Catholic priest with the United States Old Catholic Church. I am a fully professed brother with the Old Catholic Benedictines of Immaculate Mary. I'm a team member with Society of St. Benedict and co-founder of GhostBegone.biz. And yeah, I'm that guy on Eli Roth Presents the Legion of Exorcists on Travel Channel, currently streaming everywhere. And if there's anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz. And when you go there to visit, there's a lot of cool things to see. My books are there. God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, and God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry 2. The books are available a little less expensive at Amazon, and they also come in an audio version. But if you buy the books off of the website, they leave my office here. I autograph them, and they arrive to you in a beautiful house blessing kit. And you never know when one of those are going to come in handy. But another wonderful thing about buying them off the website is part of the proceeds of every sale of every copy of my books goes to support stjude.org, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in Nevada, and the ASPCA. So how cool is that? You get to help some of the neediest children on the planet and the animals too. What else is at the website? My online course, Introduction to Spiritual Warfare, taught by yours truly. It's a 12-week online college level course, and it's for all you true warriors for Christ out there that want to learn how to draw your line in the sand, make a stand, circle the wagons, put up a good fight against, God forbid, true evil if that ever comes calling. That's the course for you. All my students that graduate get a stunning diploma, certificate of completion, suited for framing, along with some other very special blessed items that you can only get from yours truly. You can enroll in the course there. If you want to know more about the course before making that type of commitment, you can just reach out to me. And we'll talk about it. There's also a place on the website where you can make an appointment to speak with me about your spiritual issues. Most importantly, brothers and sisters, I know times are tough, but my wife and I, we don't charge for our ministry work, helping people with their paranormal issues. So if you're there visiting the website and you notice the donate button and you're able to do so, please click on it and send my ministry in a small donation. I promise you, it'll be appreciated from the bottom of our hearts. And trust me, we'll put it to good use. Okay, we have a great show today, a great guest, but you all knew that. That's why you tuned in. She's in the green room. I'm going to bring her out in just a moment. But first, I got to bring out another very special person, my co host. I've known her, it feels like I've known her forever. I love her. I respect her. She's a friend. She's a lifelong paranormal experiencer. She's the owner of Stellium Books, my publisher. Please welcome to the show the one and only Annette Munich.
Thank you for such a lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here today, and we have a great special guest. She's a repeat guest and one of the most interesting people, and I can't wait to hear about her trip. Other than that, I am asking for prayers because my daughter's having a heart procedure on Tuesday, which is expected to go well, but we've been waiting for this for a while, so Tuesday's the big day. So anyone that, says a prayer for my daughter, I really appreciate it.
Well, all at her. Well, you and your whole family have been on my prayer list since I've known you. So I've already been praying for you and your family
Thank
for
you.
a long, long time. But I will add a couple of special petitions up for her tonight. I'll even throw her at our night prayer, the United States Old Catholic Church. We have live online night prayer Monday through Fridays at 7 p.m. Pacific on usocc.org. The link to that is there, and So your sister, your daughter there in our night prayer. So
I appreciate it. The whole family appreciates it. Thank you so much.
I know you're having really, really bad weather there, and you know what? Whenever I can always tell when you do because your your audio gets a little wonky. I'm hoping I don't lose you, or is it other than it just being like colder than it is in Alaska there in Oklahoma? Is it
Right.
currently snowing, or you just got a lot of snow on the
No,
ground?
no, we just have a lot of snow on the ground. It's been a brutal week. We've had highs in like the mid teens, lows around zero. Yes, colder than Anchorage, Alaska. Just a really weird weather pattern because usually this time of year the high is like 55.
Wow.
And it's been like this for days. So we're coming out of it though. So that's why I keep
Okay.
saying around here that a couple of days and the weather will be fine again, and my daughter will have her procedure and she'll be on the mend, and it'll all feel like a whole new world.
Very, very cool. And don't forget, guys, I'm still giving away blessed frankincense incense. We didn't get a winner last week, so anybody still interested in some blessed frankincense incense? I got half a dozen or so boxes left. I'm still giving that out. You just got to type the word incense into the chat room, and later on tonight, Annette will do a drawing, pull out the
Right.
name, and then get that name to me, and I'll try and track you down and beat you up for your mailing address so we can get it to you. So,
For people that can't listen to the show live, if you listen later, you can type incense into the comments on YouTube, and we'll see it. And tomorrow we'll announce the winner.
are you ready to bring out our very special guest? I'm so
I am
excited to
very
have her
ready.
back. She's actually I bring her back because of popular demand. You know, I get after I have a guest on, I always hear from their fans and followers, and every time I have her on, it's the same. Um, I'm gonna have to put her feet to the fire and ask her about her show, The Missing Piece, because a lot of her fans and followers have asked me to ask her about that. So we'll see what she has to say. She's just back from a very special trip to Prague, Vienna, Dresden, Germany, the land that gave us the poltergeist.
Oh,
And she's very gifted psychic, lifelong paranormal experiencer, an artist, content creator. In fact, if you watch the show and don't just listen to it on radio, that my show opening, she created that. So,
very
very
cool.
talented content creator,
I
and
didn't know
she's
that.
yeah, she's the host of the Missing Piece, which is was when it was she was still doing it. It was on this network, United Public Radio Network. So, without further ado, brothers and sisters, please give a big, warm paranormal ministry family welcome to the one and only Trish Mo. What are you doing?
Hi.
Hi, Trish.
So
Welcome back.
thank you. And thank you all again for it's always a pleasure being on your show. And yeah, here I am in this big empty room.
You know, you did. I love to tell people. I get asked. People ask me all the time. Those that actually watch the show and don't just tune in on FM radio. They always want to know who did my opening, and I always tell them about you. And um, the only it's funny because you had said to me after you had done it and sent me the opening, you had thought about having your voice in it and doing like an actual intro. And I miss that. I wish you would reconsider possibly doing one, maybe adding Annette into the opening and then doing throwing your voice in there too. Think about it. We'll talk about it some other time, but
Yeah, I was just every time I see it too, I'm like, oh, I should change that. I should update, different parts of it. So just for the record, I didn't use AI to create that. So
no, you didn't. I know you didn't. You worked very hard on it, and I love it. Everybody, I get lots of
thank
compliments on it
you.
all the time. So, I'm glad you're back. Welcome back. I prayed before you left you would have a safe trip. Um, so now I will shut up and let you tell us all about that. I mean, it doesn't get. If you were to ask me, or if you were to take a sneak peek at my to-do list on places to go and visit before I go to heaven. Prague, Vienna, Germany would be on that list. And a lot of people don't know that if you look at anybody's list of some of the most haunted countries in the world, those three would be there. And so I'm interested to know how this trip even fell into your lap and how that got arranged. And someone as sensitive to spirit as you are, going to those places must have just been off the charts. Uh, I don't even have the right words to describe it. How that must have felt. So tell us all about it.
Well, so I'm currently I went back to the University of Kansas. I'm pursuing my anthropology degree. And anthropology is a very broad field. It's the study of humans. So a winter break trip came up that was studying music history and culture in Prague, Vienna, and Dresden. And I was like, that's amazing. You know, it was a short trip, so I knew that it would be an opportunity for me to study abroad without having to go, you know, leaving my kids for an entire semester and things like that. It was only supposed to be a little over 20 days originally, over Christmas break. And however, due to, you know, as things go in my life, Kansas had the worst storm in recordable history in over 100 years on the day I was supposed to leave. So that was a setback. I ended up missing, you know, the first few days of our trip. And then on the way back, I came back early because my dad was in the hospital, and I was rerouted through Washington, D.C., so I was laid over in Washington, D.C. the day before the inauguration, and there was a blizzard there, and I'm like, my traveling plans here. But yeah, every one of those cities is absolutely profound. Not only the history and the culture, and I saw numerous operas. We went to, I don't even know how many, like 13 different operas and ballets, and to see the famous symphony orchestra in Prague. You know, that a lot of people don't know, that's where music from movie soundtracks and things, they record those there. That's who does it. And musicians and artists come from all over the world to audition to be in those specific countries, ballets and operas and things like that, because it's so, the talent is just crazy. And so to be able to go to the places where like Mozart and Beethoven and famous composers like that actually lived and performed and composed, and that's one thing that has always been on my bucket list. But to see cities that still have so much art and culture, and they all make Topeka look like a third world country. Honestly, there's not, I think in all three of those cities, I saw maybe 3 or 4 homeless people. I mean, all together. Like, yeah. There's just not, you don't see that. You don't see as many sick people or disabled, or they're a lot cleaner. And people are typically happier. So, you know, as a person who's sensitive to those things, going there is like a huge raise in vibration, you know, for me. So, but it does go back. They're that way now because they have had, every one of those cities has had to rebuild numerous times. And many times from the ground up. You know, during the wars, their buildings have been bombed over and over and over, yeah. And they rebuild them with the same passion, the same art, just stronger. You know, than the last time. And I think that's amazing that eventually they got to a point where a show of power for their countries was displayed by art, by the arts. Basically, who had the most exquisite buildings and architecture and music and things like that, opposed to war, which I wish we could still do that. I wish that that's how we competed with one another now. That would be great if everybody was just showing off who had the best art. But there are the darker sides. Like I believe it was Prague had the female version of Dracula back in the day. That was one of the main and ironically, her residence was right next to a Buddhist monastery. So just the history of learning things like that. And then we also went to Terrazin. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's a constant, one of the second largest fortress that was used as a concentration camp. And that's also it's a very profound experience to go to places like that as well, to appreciate in a sense of how far we've come from that type of wars, and to not repeat those things again, because that's the other side of it. You go from the beauty of these cities, and then not far, it was a few hours from the city is a concentration camp, so you have to balance the dark and the light of those things. So.
Well, I remember, and I'm just of the three places you've gone to. When I first saw that you had gone to Dresden, Germany, the name sounded familiar, and I even mentioned in a private message to Annette, "Where's Dresden?" She goes, "No, that's Dresden, Germany." And then it hit me. And what I know about Dresden, without even having to look it up, was just off the top of my head. I think of that movie. It's just a scene, and I think The Last Crusade. That's a silly movie to think of. But when Indiana Jones is in Germany, and there's that huge, giant book burning ceremony, and he accidentally bumps into Hitler in the crowd, and Hitler gives him an autograph. That's like Dresden, because they had that there, the huge book burning ceremonies. And I do know, like, the last few days of the war, Dresden was bombed a lot. I mean, it was almost bombed off the face of the earth, because both the Americans and the British were like 4 or 5 nights straight, constant bombing that, because that was like the last one of the Nazi strongholds there. So yeah, then you have like well over 7,000, something like that, in that town of Jewish people that were sent to concentration camps from Dresden. And it left just like the number of Jews left in that town were like in the single digits. So yeah, you can just, the contrast there. And you're not the first person spiritually and psychically gifted that has told me they've traveled to places like that. And of course, there's the stark contrast between the good and the evil, and some of the terrible things that have happened there. And these cities date back to, like, 11th, 10th, 11th, 12th century. But that some of these psychics come back and tell me they almost didn't come home, because it's such a different feeling there, and the people seem so much happier than they seem here, that they almost didn't come back. So that's a struggle for someone like you.
It is. And there's even everybody has their pets with them everywhere there. I mean, you go to the finest restaurant and they have a dog bowl sitting there for public. It's such, and I noticed that as soon as I came back into the US, even at the airport. This, in Europe, people had their pets on planes and in the plane, like not in a carrier or anything, just on their lap or whatever. And everybody was fine with it. I love animals, so of course I was fine with it. But then the second I get back in the US, there's giant signs everywhere, pets must be, make sure your pet's in a carrier, make sure, on a leash, this, that, don't let them touch anyone, don't let, and then the second we landed when I was coming back in Washington, D.C., people started fighting on the plane automatically. And I'm like, I mean, not like physically fighting, but as far as just being petty and bitter to each other for no reason, like, oh, I get to go first. My seat's ahead of yours. I get to get off the plane and I was like, we're all going to the same place. We all have to hurry up and wait anyway. So why are you, but you don't see things like that, like such animosity towards other people and towards, and we took public transportation everywhere, in subways and trains and buses and things like that. And it was very pleasant. There weren't people being rude and pushy and and I know that's an entire product of your environment. It is, we become everything around us. So if you're around people who are so unhappy with their environments and their lives and stuff all the time, then yes, of course, we project that onto everyone else. So I get that, but it was such a distinct, like the second we touched down, all of a sudden we fly through this fog and everybody's unhappy again. We landed in the US.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I love America. I love my country, but I agree with you 100%. It's like, I don't travel well. I fantasize about traveling all the time. And once a year, I got to go to my church retreat, and I love going. But I don't, traveling's weird, and I notice that with people. And I just try to just be so, I try to smile a lot. I try to be as polite as I can. I try not to get in people's way. When people get in my way, I try to be overly forgiving, overly helpful, and I just try to smother people with love and kindness. And you can tell that it almost takes that to snap a lot of these people that are just so angry and happy out of that funk, because they're in a spiritual funk, and
Yeah.
you almost got to snap them out of that. Um, so yeah, very, very interesting. But I'm glad you had a good time. And how did you? I mean, you got to be honest. Was there a moment where you thought, "What if I just stayed?"
Oh, absolutely. The second I came back, I told my daughter, I was like, first of all, I want to find a way to take my kids back there to experience that. And I'm like, well, second of all, we should just move there because the cost of living is lower. They have better food.
Yeah.
But it's true, even the food, especially for someone like I have an autoimmune disease with Lyme disease, they don't have corn syrup, something as small as that, like in their soda. So I don't really drink that much soda, but you can tell just things like that. They don't allow a lot of like red dye and blue dye and yellow, whatever, all the preservatives. They don't have it. All of there's just bakeries and fresh food everywhere that you don't see, of course you see bakeries and there's still people in the US that do that, but we have a lot of the US is actually one of the few countries now, of the larger ones that even allow certain preservatives and I mean, not just in food, water, makeup, everything, things that
in the hundreds.
Toys.
I was just listening to that. A lot of people think he's a whack job. The Kennedy that just got into office. I like the guy, but I heard him talk about it's in the hundreds of the chemicals that are banned to be used in the food in Europe and other places that we still use here. It's just unbelievable, and that's why our kids are so sick.
Yeah. And so on top of, everybody being happier, and it's a much more colorful country, like I was saying about this, like anytime, anywhere I live, I have stuff on the walls, I have colors, I have paintings and things like that. But all of our houses and buildings in the US now have become like this to me feels like a hospital or like a medical, you know, it's very like sterile and like there's no personality. And in Europe, all the buildings, you know, you have these bright, beautiful, they're all different colors. I mean, you see pink, yellow, purple, everything. And very intricate, you know, they still have the old sculptures and the crown molding and things like that you don't see anymore in the US. You know, we just, on modern buildings, we don't do that anymore because people are worried about the turnover and real estate, of course, money, you know. So that made me a lot happier too. There's just a lot more color and it's not just, you know, completely gray and you know, boring. So
It's so beautiful that their culture is so rich and they keep it alive. And, you know, something that I noticed over the last 10 or 15 years, I like to look at different celebrity homes. They show the inside of their homes. And they all look like they're decorated by the same person. And they all look like a hotel.
Yeah.
And there's none of the stuff that we had when we were younger. You don't see books. You don't see a whole bunch of, you know, homemade things. You don't see anything that's whimsical or artistic too much. They do have paintings and stuff, but they tend to be more simple and stark and modern. They look anything but cozy.
Right.
That's what I'm getting to. And some of the kitchens, this is just my opinion, are horrendous. They look more like operating rooms than kitchens.
Yeah.
They're just stainless steel and white and bright lights and horrible and not one basket to be found.
And that's exactly how I am as well. And so it was almost overwhelming. I mean, because they're building, it's not just like going to a colorful place or you know, a place that has good art. Like every one of those cities are three of the most beautiful that I've ever even seen on TV in the world. You know, it's like they're over the top as far as because their artwork is they commission artists from all over the world. You know, they used to have for a lot of their opera houses and the state houses, they would have competitions call for artists to come from all over the world and compete to be able to paint their buildings or do their sculptures or whatever. And it's I mean, completely, they've got gold everything and you know, they also, I love how they still, like you said, Annette, how they still incorporate history and culture into it as well, because every single building has, you know, Greek and Roman deities, and there's a story in everything. You know, you even see Native American stories on the side of buildings from North America. So it's not like they just incorporated their own culture. They have culture from all over the world because they bring artists from all over the world. So that's really an amazing, I mean, and the cost, like I said, the cost of living is much less. So everything's cheaper. So I would absolutely advise anyone who can't go there.
A few years ago, I was with my other daughter downtown Chicago, and I was dragging her into all of the old theaters. And I said, you've got to see this because they're not going to make any more like this.
Yeah.
You know, just the most beautiful theaters that you can imagine, not just in Chicago, but she lives by one in St. Louis, the Fox Theater. But the way that they used to make these beautiful theaters and how gorgeous they were. And now, you know, there's no glamour, there's no detail, everything is just simple and functional, and one looks just like the other.
Yeah.
But when they're gone, they're going to be gone, and that's going to be it. They're never going to make it like that again. I wish they would, but it's not cost efficient to make grand places like that anymore.
I mean, yes and no. I kind of disagree on that, because when you see what's interesting, on my way here, I saw a billboard, and it was about, I don't even know what it was advertising, but the big message was, when they're gone, they're gone. That's exactly what it said. And the next one said, the right seed. And I was thinking about, we've been talking about like death and things like that. As you all know, my father passed away. I came home early from my trip, but that night I got home early in the morning and rushed back from Kansas City, spent the day in the hospital with him, and he died that night. So, but I was thinking about that with death and how we hold on to things and people, and even past historical things, and that's true. Like, people are so afraid of change, whether it be in anything, in governments, in architecture, in people, in relationships. But and that's the thing. Nothing can ever be the way it was. Nothing will ever be the way it was. But everything comes back in a different form, and that's evolution. And that's what I love about studying anthropology, is because so often, well, I love it and I hate it. Because science is very, I think people, when they only study one subject, it becomes like tunnel vision. So we for instance, we only compare a lot of times through biological anthropology and things like that, humans to primates. But by doing so, that means humans are only ever going to evolve as fast as primates. And at this rate, actually, the bonobos, monkeys, are more evolved than humans, because they no longer kill each other.
Wow.
So yeah, it's but that's the thing. If you stay on that bell curve where you only experience and you only observe one specific species or one specific subject, things like that, then there's no growth there. It's just going back and forth, And so I think the same thing in viewing death and things like that. People are so afraid of death being final and infinite in that matter. Well, yes, it is in that form, but we become something else. We become spirit after we die. So just because, and I don't want to explain, even with my father, the night he died, okay, well, going back, a few weeks before I died, he had dementia, and he knocked on my door and gave me a box of blueberry Pop-Tarts. And I'm like, I don't really eat Pop-Tarts. It was a funny thing. He didn't say anything. He just said, here you go, and turned around and walked away and smiled. And I was like, okay, and I kind of forgot about it until after I got back from my trip. The night he died, I kept hearing blueberries. And I'm like him saying blueberries. I'm like, blueberries? What does that mean? What are you talking? What do you mean blueberries? So I got up the next morning, and I always helped him make his coffee and stuff first thing in the morning. And him and I would talk in the kitchen. And I went to the coffee maker, and there's the box of blueberry Pop-Tarts. Well, on the back of it, none of the other Pop-Tarts there had anything besides like nutrition info and stuff on them. And this one had giant like angel wings, and it said "Ready when you are," and it it said pop, like Pop-Tart, like pops. And I was like, huh. When you are, and with his humor, there were little speech bubbles at the bottom that said like, it's dark in here, and another one said something about help me out of here. So I was like, oh my gosh, like but that's proof. And then even the night of his funeral, other people kept coming up to me that day, the people at the funeral home and the minister had a story. They're like, this has never happened, and something happened today. And I was like, and I thought of your dad, and I was like, yeah, obviously that's proof. Mediums aren't crazy. Spirits communicate with us all the time, just in a different form. It's because we're not looking for it in that form that had I just been looking for blueberries, like the actual fruit, I wouldn't have paid attention to the Pop-Tart. So you have to have an open mind to be able to see other perspectives. And I think that's how I've started looking at the spirit world as well, and spiritual warfare and things like that, because I know we've talked about this before as well. Like, a lot of times negative entities aren't always demons or demonic. People tend to classify if it's either good or bad, and it's either going to be, if it's on the bad scale, then it's automatically a demon. No, that's not necessarily true. But even non-human entities, sometimes it's not, they don't necessarily have a bad intention in our life. It's their nature. If you're in a negative environment, then that's going to automatically be a magnet for negative energy. And so a lot of times it's like a black hole. Like, sometimes the things that are there don't really have a choice to be there. They were just pulled there due to the environment. So if you raise the vibration of yourself, if you raise the vibration of your environment, colors, music, things like that, happiness, just joy,
Yeah.
And gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Gratitude
Absolutely.
is very high vibe.
Yeah. Gratitude, music, just anything that, I try to stay away from. I don't even watch the news, as far as people are talking about, so angry about the politics and this and that. And I'm like, and people ask me a lot about politics. I'm like, it doesn't affect me. I mean, of course, in a literal sense, yes, it affects me, because I have to pay taxes and things like that. And I live in the US, and our laws, and we're governed by that. So yes, in that manner, it affects me, but it's not my reality. It is my reality, but that energy is not my reality. I choose to be happy wherever I'm at. That's not, you're going to have laws and rules and things like that anywhere you're at. You're going to have laws and rules after you die, for that matter, in the spiritual world. That's everywhere, but you can't let that dictate your life. And the same with fear. I thought about that with these storms. I'm like, if they didn't advertise a week ahead of time that we're going to have some crazy blizzard or whatever, would it be that bad? Maybe all of us pouring our energy into thinking that there's a giant blizzard coming makes it even worse. I guarantee it does. So it's one of those things.
That's such a really good point, and that's really what's behind. And it's a dark energy with the politics, because they make money off the clicks and the likes and the views, and everything is sensationalized in the headlines and keep people afraid, keep people upset, and money's being made from that.
Absolutely.
If there isn't something going wrong, they look until they find something going wrong, because I don't think it's a bad thing the way we have it now, where you can watch all kinds of things online. I'm not saying that. But, back in the day, a newspaper cost what a newspaper cost, whether there was good news and a bad news, or, of course, a combination of both. And nothing made them more money than that, by hyping things up and keeping people whipped into a fervor. So like what you're saying with the weather, when you get a bunch of people plugged into that kind of an energy, does it make things worse? I think, of course.
Absolutely. It does. Yeah. And even during wars, propaganda was a big thing. And especially with the concentration camps and the Nazi regime. And that was one of the big things at the Terezin concentration camp. Is it was one that was considered nicer. I mean, it wasn't nicer at all, but they did have certain rooms they kept nice, because that was the specific one where they came to make the propaganda films to make it look like they, the Jewish people, the prisoners in the camp weren't being treated that bad and they didn't have it that bad, So that one was actually nicer in certain areas, but that was a perspective. But again, it goes back to perspective, just like the U.S., in certain places in the U.S., they try to portray other countries as being super, even before I left, I had all these lectures to attend and go to and stuff of safety in Europe and how it's so dangerous. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's perspective. Like, walk down the street in Topeka, Kansas, and you'll probably have a few bullets fly past your head, and then go to Europe, and I'm like, there's not crime like, you know what I mean? So I think it's a lot of times it's based on what you're accustomed to, and different people's realities. It's mostly perspective. So.
And it's a little bit kind of weird to think of a place being lucky to be the land that time forgot. That everybody just didn't worry about Prague or Vienna or Dresden so much, and the world went crazy around them, and they still have a quality of life and happiness to the people that live there.
I think that's, everybody asking where I've been and stuff, and because I just dropped off the face of the earth, and that was one of the things I think that is big, become big, and such in the U.S. anyways. I'm sure other places too, since the shutdown in 2020, is how isolated people have become, and in certain situations, even like with myself, I was being a caretaker for someone with dementia, and that's. Nobody ever talks about those things. Like nobody, and somebody at my father's funeral even said, nobody tells you what it's going to be like at different stages of your life, like at the end of your life. Nobody ever talks about that. And I think that's important, because otherwise you get hit with it. Nobody's prepared for any of those states. Nobody's prepared for midlife stages when everything, you decide that you want to change everything in your life, and then people just say it's a midlife crisis. And then nobody's prepared for after you retire and how you're going to deal with the changes with that when you feel like you have no purpose, and just different. And I thought that was a really good point. It's true. So we're so humans have such a problem battling their own inner wars, which I think obviously creates all these outer wars, which will never, that'll never be resolved, spiritual warfare or in the 3D, in the physical world, until we deal with our own inner wars. And that's huge, because it was, especially from older generations, all these things that nobody talks about. So
and I think we became a more plastic and superficial society. And we used to have, some people listening might be too young to remember shows like All in the Family, and older ladies really were like Edith Bunker, really were. Now you're 75 and you're still getting lip injections and wearing miniskirts and trying to be, I guess they think that that's aging gracefully, but it isn't. It's, I don't know, like a big denial or something, like there's no beauty in things the way they naturally are. And that's a problem. But our whole society is pretty upside down. And it took a long time to get that way. So, you go to a place where the quality of life is better and you come back and see everybody's obnoxious. It's everybody, a lot of people are very obnoxious. And it didn't used to be that way at all. People were a lot more polite. But they're like trained to be hateful and shout their opinions. I remember a couple of years ago, somebody asking me who I vote for, and I'm like, what do you care who I vote for?
Right.
like you're just supposed to tell everybody. And when I said that, they're like, well, don't say that about yourself. And I'm like, no, seriously, I don't care who you vote for. Not trying to be rude, but all of a sudden you're supposed to just be so.
Well, there was a time where people, that was just, you didn't ask somebody that.
No,
I remember there was a time when you
you
didn't ask
didn't.
people that. It just wasn't just, you just
It,
didn't do it.
it was like asking somebody how old they were or how much money they made or how much they weighed or something like that. It would be inappropriate.
I can't stop thinking about the message, and that was clear message that you got from your father after he passed, Trish. And so I get that a lot from people who reach out to me and say, you know, my father just passed, my mother just passed, a sister or brother just passed, and I've been praying and praying and praying and talking out. Give me a sign that you're okay, that you're still around, watching over. I'm here to tell everybody that I believe true love and family and blood lasts forever on to the next life. So for all those out there that are struggling, I try to say, listen, you don't know how they're going to communicate with you or how the message is going to come. I mean, after my mother passed, I didn't talk to anybody about it, and I had psychics that didn't even really know me, but they were told who I was in these visions, who would reach out to me and say, I have a little tiny lady who's got her hand out to me, and she's got white beads in her hands, and she keeps playing with these white beads, and your name was mentioned, and I don't know what this is. Well, when they described this tiny lady to me, I realized they were describing my mother. So I reached out to my sister, one of my sisters. Both my sisters are very spiritually connected to spirit. I reached out to one of them and said, "What do you think that is? What's mom trying to say?" And my sister immediately knew. She goes, "Your mom's trying to tell you you need to pray the rosary more." Well, at that time, I'm having that discussion with my sister. My brother, my younger brother, is on vacation visiting the Vatican, and it's right here. He doesn't know anything about this. He ends up buying me this white rosary there, and he just felt the need to buy that for me while he was there. And I don't even know if I've even had this discussion with him, but there you go. So you have to. What advice would you give to people that are really struggling, wanting to get some message from a loved one who's crossed over, whatever that message may be? Are you still watching over me? Are you doing okay? Whatever the message might be that they're looking for. And they may get a message that's not what they're looking for. And that's where I think people put the blinders on and they miss messages.
Yeah, I think you have to be open to, first of all, you have to pay attention. You have to be uh, present enough to receive a message. You know, especially nowadays, we're all so distracted with our phones and with the internet and with whatever's going on in the world that we fail to pay attention to the little things around us. And I think as a medium, everyone is born into this world being intuitive and could have the potential to be sensitive to those things all the time, if they slow down in life and listen, you know. So and what I mean by that is, as a medium, I get messages. I could be walking through the living. I don't really watch TV, but my mom does. I could be walking through the living room and something will come across the TV that I stop that resonates. I'm like, wait a minute. So I'll stop and I'll listen. I mean, sometimes it'll even say my name for that night. It'll be like, I mean, it won't be me, obviously, but people automatically discount. They're like, oh, that's just another Trisha in the world. Well, yes, in a literal sense, but if you listen to what the message is, you know, just part of it, that there's a reason that something got your attention that made you stop and pay attention. Or it could be a sign on the side of on a billboard, on the side of a bus passing. It could be a license plate. It could be something on the radio. It could be things like a color. If you go out, even not having to do with just any of your guardian angels, spirit guides, things like that, and you said, I want a specific sign today of, I don't know, a sunflower or something, and people go out looking for an actual, they'll be expecting to see a physical sunflower, come into their life, and they'll go through the whole day and be like, I didn't get a sign. But if they think back, they saw sunflowers on a mural on the side of a wall at a hospital or something. They saw sunflowers on someone's overalls, in front of them in the store. They saw sunflowers on a magazine cover. There's all these things that they missed because they weren't paying attention. So I think I've been learning sign language lately in school, and that's really hard, actually. I think it's harder than learning any other foreign language because the mentality behind it, I think it would be easier to learn any other foreign language, actually, because, and that reminds me of paying attention to the spirit world, because it's so foreign to us. And the same with people who communicate with animals and things like that. It's our only difference, and the line what creates a wall between us and them is that we don't understand each other's languages. It's not that they're completely separate and foreign from us. We all exist in the same, yes, different realms, but we just don't know that we don't understand the language. We don't speak the same language. And so I'm really trying to be more open-minded about that. And it's helped me in my growth of spirituality and everything a lot, in that aspect. So animals too, be huge communicators. they can communicate.
Well, I just have a few minutes left before I got to kick you out of here. Annette, is there anything in particular you really wanted to ask her, or Trish, is there any announcements you want to make to your fans and followers?
I wanted to say heartfelt condolences on the loss of your dad. And Father Shawn and I, we both had parents we took care of that passed away that had dementia. And it's very challenging and very heart-wrenching. And so very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. And I'm actually, I created a workbook. I don't have it published yet on my website for life planning. It's very helpful for me because I have ADHD and autism as well. But there needs to be, both my parents have dementia. So my dad didn't have any insurance. His insurance just lapsed at the end of December, actually, his health insurance. So because they forgot to sign a form, things like that. So I created this planner to have all of that information in one place, which would be extremely helpful for caregivers or anyone actually, even just family. And I don't care how old you are. I mean, that could happen anytime. I thought about that on my trip. I'm like, I left a folder on my desk and I told my son, who's old enough, I said, there's my life insurance, all of my information, my bank account, everything you would need to know, God forbid something happens. So, but I am going to start just kind of my journey to healing stuff now that I'm finally found a house I'm moving into this week. Pretty sure it's haunted. I mean, it's definitely haunted. All of mine are, but it might have been like an old asylum. But I'm going to be doing some short courses and things on how to find the history of your house, things like that, even how to find the history of your family, because all of that's very important. If you know where you came from and the history of something, and I'm going to explain on my channel that as well, how that affects your present life and how all of that can allow spirits in as well, and so that's all on just trishmo.com. All of my websites are going to be combined on that specific one. So, and I'm not just doing it for the public, I'm doing it to hold myself accountable too, to kind of document my journey and stuff. And I encourage everyone, I would much rather watch YouTube and the journey of someone else's life. I don't care how, like, come with no makeup and whatever your pajamas. If it's about telling your story, you know what I mean? Like, I've experienced a lot of it, from being homeless to having almost every illness you can imagine to all kinds of things. So I love it when people do that, and I think that's more when you're creating and when you're being authentic. Authenticity is, I've said this before, is the highest vibration, and so I really do encourage other people to do that, you know, and that leads to happiness regardless of where you're at. So
Well, you know I love you and respect you, and I'm so happy that you had a safe trip. And I'm going to have you back after you move into this house and experience for a little bit, because I know you're going to have some stories to tell. But I want you to have a wonderful, wonderful remainder to your Friday evening and your weekend. And I can't wait to visit with you again. So thank you so very much for being here.
thank you. And good to see you again too, Annette.
Thank you for being on, Trish. It was fabulous. I really enjoyed it.
We'll see you later, Trish.
Thanks,
Bye
girl.
bye. I love her. I love
So,
you too. When's the last time I told you how much I love you too?
uh,
Today.
today,
Well, we're almost out of time. Who's next week's guest? I'll let you guess who it is. Who do you think next week is?
um, Rick Garnett.
No, it is our very first. You should know this. It's our very first Happy Medium Monthly with Susan Ahern.
Oh, of course. Why didn't I think of that?
So real quick, everybody, it's happy next week, next Friday, the 28th, is something that Annette and I are going to do the last Monday of every month with the happy medium herself, live from Cape Cod, Susan
Susan
Ahern,
Heaton. Yeah.
be giving free live on-air psychic readings the whole show. So if you
Right.
ever wanted to have a free live on-air psychic reading from a truly gifted, a gift from God psychic medium like the happy medium Susan Ahern, got to tune in live, type your question in the chat, and you'll get your reading. But what else do I want to say? I don't really have any other big announcements other than thank you so much for being here. I couldn't do it without you, and I'll get together with you and Trish, and we'll work on maybe if she has time, putting together a new opening, new show opening, and to get you in there and get Trish's voice in there editing it. So anyway, I'm going to say as soon as we're off here, in honor of her trip to Prague, I'm going to say a prayer
Nice.
to the baby Jesus of Prague for you and your daughters. And
Okay.
so keep me posted on that. But thank you again and have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you, and you have a great weekend, and good night, everybody. I really enjoyed it. I'll see you next week.
See you later, Annette. Couldn't have done it without him. Brothers and sisters, thank you to Joe Montaldo, Michelle DeRoche, the United Public Radio Network for carrying my show. Thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. I couldn't do it without you. Stay tuned for Spirit Switchboard with Carrie Lynn Shellhorn. And remember, brothers and sisters, we may have done what the devil said we did, but we are not who the devil says we are. Good night, Danny. Good night, Jack. Good night, Dog. Good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. I love you all. God bless you all in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Peace.